This is Neil Schneider for MTBS-TV at Oculus Connect. To my immediate right is Max Cohen, head of mobile for Oculus. Welcome to the program, Max.
Hi, thanks for being. It's good to be here.
Congratulations on the, I should call it the impending release of Gear VR. It's been
Innovator Edition.
Innovator Edition. Very well received so far. Now, one of the biggest challenges with mobile platforms is, I take it, the processing power, even though it's growing exponentially on a regular basis, it's still a fraction of what you're going to get on the desktop world. What did you have to go through to make Gear VR possible?
Well, so John Carmack has actually said that the processors and the GPUs involved here are similar to the last generation of consoles for a few seconds, because you can't really run at the max speed. If you feel the back of a computer when you've got a high-end GPU in it and you've been playing for a while, that is getting really hot in terms of 80, 90 degrees Celsius and so forth. And so that's something that you can't do on a mobile device, and mostly because you're then going to have it in your hand. I also, it's funny because I've compared an S4 phone, a Galaxy S4, to a high-end GPU, and you look at just the difference in size between it, and you could fit about 20 of the entire phones inside the housing for that graphics card. So we have to make compromises. We have to deal with making sure we still hit 60 frames a second so that the VR is good VR. We make sure that we don't eat down the battery life too much. And so what we had to do is work very closely with Samsung and with Qualcomm in many ways to really maximize what we can get out of the hardware and to make sure that every single app that's been developed is as optimized as possible.
So let's get down to the basics of the product. I gather it's a hybrid product between, well, maybe hybrid's not the right word, but between the Samsung Note 4 and the Gear VR add-on.
Yeah, so it's an add-on to the Note 4. The Note 4 is the processing unit, right? That's where you've got the CPU, the GPU. It's basically the computer. So strapping a computer under your face doesn't really make much sense. You can do that though with the phone because it isn't a small enough housing. And then what this is here is we have an Oculus Sense unit in here with our firmware. There's a touchpad, a back button. You've got some volume controls and things like that. And then you've got just some head straps to make sure it's a comfortable fit because you do have the weight of the phone here on the outside. And the two of these together gives you a complete untethered VR experience that you can throw into your backpack and take with you. Actually, you asked if I had one of these, and I literally pulled it out of my backpack. And that's one of the biggest advantages of Gear VR.
Where's the power source for this?
So the phone, right? I mean, you don't have to ever plug in because you're running off the phone's battery.
Wonderful. So the phone does all the work. So it drives the display.
Except for the sensor. So there are sensors in the phones, but they're not good enough. We tried that initially. The IMU is just not going to be high enough quality to get the level of tracking that we need. So we had to put a different sensor inside the headset.
Okay. Now, what my understanding is it's got orientational tracking versus positional tracking.
Correct.
Can you elaborate a little bit about the difference between the two for those that aren't familiar?
Sure. So on the orientation side, I mean, you can look down, you can look side by side and do all that. And so when you're in kind of a stable position, that's basically what you would be doing here. But what position tracking means is you can actually move forward, you can lean side to side, and that's really key to have a ultra comfortable VR experience, and this product does lack that. It's an area of intense research for us. John Carmack today in his keynote mentioned a number of ideas that he has, and we're also working with some other companies to see if we can make that happen. But on this unit, it lacks that, which means that content needs to be designed to not require you to lean forward or lean back, because the world will move with you. It will be, if you were to hear and you move forward, the game engine doesn't know that you've done that, and so that can be uncomfortable to people.
Now, this is I think you call it the Innovator Edition, did I hear correctly? So is this intended for developers of content? Do you plan to have a release for anyone who wants it? How are you planning to push this out?
Yeah, this is not a developer kit, but it is aimed at developers and enthusiasts. And what we mean by that is there are still some rough edges. Things like the lack of positional tracking. We want to make sure that if it's a truly mass-marketed commercial version, anyone can just pick it up and go. Because of some of the limitations of this device, it's incredibly exciting. It's a 1440p Super AMOLED 5.7-inch screen. Looks beautiful. It's incredibly low latency, sub 20 milliseconds, motion to photon latency. So the experience is great, but we want to make sure that anyone who walks into a Best Buy or an AT&T store, or Verizon store, T-Mobile store, understands what they're getting, and we don't feel like we're there yet. And it still needs a little bit more work before we could kind of drop the Innovator Edition moniker.
So remind me, when is this due for release?
So this is coming out this year. The release date and the pricing is controlled by Samsung, but it will be sometime soon.
Now, is this something that was licensed out to Samsung? I mean, are we going?
So this couldn't be done. Oculus is doing the software platform, and when you put it on, you then are in the Oculus platform. You're in Oculus Home. So we could have just said, "Here's the code," and we're done. But the VR wouldn't have been good enough. And one thing that Oculus stands for is to make sure that everyone that tries it has a great experience. And so for that reason, we've collaborated very closely. You could simplify it and say Samsung does the hardware and Oculus does the software, and you wouldn't be wrong, but there's close collaboration on both ends there where we're working to make sure that every piece ties in well. So it's not, I mean, I talk to Samsung maybe 10 times a day.
So what kind of content can we look forward to on Gear VR?
Yeah, so there's going to be a mix. That's one of the great things about virtual reality is that you can do a little bit of something for everyone. What we're showing here at Connect is on the media side, we've got some 360 3D content. We've got an intro to VR video where there's some CG of space, and then you get to see Cirque du Soleil and Zarkana. This is from Felix and Paul Studios. You're in a yurt in Mongolia, and you feel like you're watching as a family's eating dinner, and you really feel like you're there. It's pretty neat. We've also got a music video of an artist named Patrick Watson playing. There is a longer length Zarkana Cirque du Soleil situation. Then on the traditional media side, we were showing some trailers in Oculus Cinema. We've got some IMAX content. We have a multi-screen theater of Maze Runner where you can see screens on the walls. DreamWorks put together a penguins theater where you're on a beach and there's penguins and they interact with you as you look at them. So then there's also panorama photos. So that's on the media consumption side. On the gaming side, we've got tabletop games where you're controlling characters that are moving around that are third person. There's a first person adventure called Land's End made by us two from who made Monument Valley, where you're kind of exploring a VR world and solving some puzzles. There's a whole bunch of other games. There's Bomb Squad, and so really the nice thing about VR, especially mobile VR, is if you can build for Android and you can build in Unity or Unreal, you can put together an application and go.
Now, one of the things that strikes me about this is that in the mobile field, phones get upgraded on a regular basis. Like every 6 months, you have a new phone to look forward to, and maybe it's even faster than that.
Samsung is on a 6-month cycle for their flagship. The actual flagships are every year, but every 6 months they're releasing a flagship.
So will Gear VR as a product be changing with each iteration of the phones?
It's incredibly complicated to have a 6-month hardware upgrade cycle like that. It's something that we want to do. We want to strive for it. We're not announcing any future products right now, but we're excited about the possibilities of being able to stay ahead of the technology curve and continually improve it. And so partnering with Samsung, it's a big task, but it's something that we're looking forward to.
Now, from what I'm gathering, like Oculus was primarily responsible for the software, and Samsung was primarily responsible for the hardware. If I heard correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong. Are we looking towards a future where this software could be on other, working with other smartphone manufacturers?
If the technology could be good enough, sure. I would say that Samsung is in a unique position of having OLEDs that are fantastic screens, low persistence. They're a great company to work with in terms of tweaking what we need to tweak, and John Carmack spoke at length about that today as well. So it's not something where Oculus is trying to push this into as many homes as possible. But if there were opportunities that we could also do great VR elsewhere, then that's something that we would consider in the future.
So it's not like a marriage where it's going to be like one manufacturer with Oculus for the rest of their lives. There could be some diversity.
We're focused on Samsung for now.
Wonderful, wonderful. So one more question for you is that, I mean, I could understand, let's say if people are on an airplane and they need long battery life, they could easily, plug it in as they would with their smartphone. But I'm impressed that this is a really high-resolution device. I'm wondering I think it's even higher than the Oculus DK2, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. The DK2 is a Note 3 screen, which is 1080p. This is a Note 4 screen, which is 1440p.
Is there any opportunity to, maybe when this would be a hybrid, like desktop/mobile platform, where you tether it to your PC or to your mobile, depending on what you're using?
It's an interesting idea. We've talked about that a lot. It's not something we're rushing to do right now because we have a high-end PC product that stands alone. And we announced today Crescent Bay, and there's some great things that go along with that. The mobile product is a very different product line. It has some disadvantages of the PC product and some advantages around being untethered, for instance. So we're not trying to converge them quickly. We are committed to working on both these products for the near future.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations with this. I think it's very promising.
All right, thank you.
This is Neil Schneider for MTBS-TV at Oculus Connect. Thank you for watching.